Hi everyone, I hope your day has been gentle and peaceful. In today's episode, we return to James and Diep's quiet wooden house. A place where life after the wedding is meant to be warm, simple, and calm. But this morning, something feels different. Diep wakes with a small dizziness, a soft internal shift she can't quite name, and as the hours unfold, a secret begins quietly forming in her hands. One she isn't ready to share. Not yet, not even with James. If you enjoy slow, emotional storytelling, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chapters. Morning settled over the wooden house in a soft, almost tender way. Light filtered through the thin curtains in pale ribbons, brushing across the floorboards, catching on the frayed edge of the blanket where Diep still lay. She was usually an early riser. Years of tending the orchard had shaped her rhythms, but today her eyes opened slowly, as if her mind had returned from sleep before the rest of her body. For a long moment, she simply listened. The hush of morning. The distant clatter of James closing the gate as he left for the warehouse. The faint rustle of leaves against the window. Everything felt normal, and yet, something didn't. A faint dizziness, barely strong enough to call dizziness. A soft tightening in her chest, there and gone in a breath. She lifted a hand to her sternum, inhaling slowly. The air smelled faintly of last night's grapefruit blossoms. James had brought a few branches inside after dinner, joking that the house should smell like our future. The memory made her smile, but the strange sensation lingered. She washed her face, tied her hair loosely, and stepped outside. The world was just waking. Early light cast a silver-blue sheen across the orchard. A thin mist clung to the trees, softening their shapes into something almost dreamlike. She walked the narrow path she'd walked every morning for months. But today, each step felt heavier, not painful, just weighted, as if her body was sending signals she didn't yet know how to interpret. Near the third row, she stopped. The ground tilted, not spinning, just shifting gently, like a boat touching a small wave. She steadied herself against a thick grapefruit trunk, eyes closed until the sensation passed. When she opened her eyes, the orchard looked exactly the same, but she didn't. She sank down beneath the tree, palm unconsciously pressing to her lower abdomen. There was no evidence of anything. No sign. Only a quiet whisper of possibility. A memory surfaced. Women laughing in the marketplace, telling stories about their first pregnancies. Sometimes the body knows before the mind does, one had said. It tells you quietly. Maybe that was all this was. She wasn't ready to name it. Not yet. Diep. She looked up just in time to see NHI running down the slope, her ponytail bouncing, a wildly uneven drawing clutched in her hand. A weekend visit, unexpected but not unusual. NHI loved the orchard more than she loved anywhere else. You look tired, the girl said seriously. Are you sick? No, sweetheart. Just a little light-headed. Not convinced but not arguing, NHI thrust the drawing into Diep's lap. 3 figures beneath a slanted roof. A too large sun above them, and then, a 4th figure. Small, almost hidden, drawn in lighter strokes beside Diep. A baby? Diep asked softly. NHI nodded enthusiastically. Yeah. I thought maybe one day you and James will have one. Something warm and frightening expanded inside her. She hugged the girl, but her mind kept drifting back to the tiny drawn figure. By noon, sunlight had sharpened. The dizziness returned in small waves, and Diep decided to stop by the local shop. She bought rice, tea, soap, and tucked quietly beneath them, hidden from the shopkeeper's eyes. A small paper-wrapped box. At home, she washed her face and steadied herself in the mirror. Her reflection wavered, then settled. When her hands stopped trembling, she carried the small box to the bathroom. Time slowed. The world seemed to step back, offering her privacy. She opened the test. Set it on the sink. Leaned against the wall. 1 minute. 2, 3. She didn't want to look. She had to look. When she did, her breath caught. 2 lines. Clear, undeniable. Her knees softened. Not from fear, but from a tender, overwhelming awe. Tears gathered but didn't fall. She sat on the bed, the test still in her hand, breathing carefully, as if the air itself had become fragile. By late afternoon, she forced herself back into the rhythm of chores, washing dishes, wiping the table, trying to distract herself. Then, a knock. Mrs. Huyen stood at the door, basket of food in hand, fresh vegetables. Warm soup. An extra blanket tucked under her arm. A new daughter-in-law shouldn't be alone, she said warmly. In the kitchen, it took only minutes for her to notice. You're pale today, Diep, she said, eyes narrowing knowingly. There's always a reason when a young woman is this tired. Diep forced a gentle smile. Just a long day. But when the older woman spoke about her own pregnancy, how she knew even before the test. How her body whispered the truth, Diep felt something inside her tighten, not fear. Recognition. When the door finally closed behind the older woman, the house fell still again. Diep stood alone in the kitchen, the warm light reflecting on a glass of water she hadn't yet drunk. She wasn't hiding the truth from James because she doubted him, She was hiding it because she wanted to be sure. Because her past had taught her that good news, when held too tightly, could slip away. Because once, another family had pushed her out when she couldn't give them a child. And now this fragile hope felt too precious to let loose into the world. Not yet, just a little longer. Evening crept in, soft and unhurried. Diep stood by the window as the sky faded from amber to purple. Then, footsteps on the wooden steps. James. He pushed the door open with his shoulder, a stack of documents under one arm, a small plastic bag in the other. "You're still awake," he said. "You're home later than usual." They ate together, simple food, ordinary conversation, warehouse delays, a driver who whistled the same song every day. She nodded when she needed to, but her gaze kept drifting to his hands. Hands that had steadied her in storms, patched old roots, held her gently on the hardest nights. After dinner, they cleaned together, the quiet rhythm of two people who had learned how to share a life. Then he turned off the main light, leaving only a soft warm glow above the sink. In the narrow hallway, he slipped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. "Tired?" he murmured. "A little. Do you regret it yet?" he asked quietly. "This life, the orchard, me?" She let out a soft breath, almost a laugh. "If I regretted it, would I still be here washing dishes with you at this hour?" He smiled against her shoulder, the tension in his chest loosening. His hands shifted, slowly, unconsciously, until one settled over her lower abdomen. Her breath faltered. She placed her hand over his, covering his knuckles. He intertwined his fingers with hers, unaware of the weight of the moment. But she felt everything. She could tell him now. She could turn around and say the words. "James, we're going to have a baby." But fear, old, scarred fear, kept her quiet. So instead, she leaned back against him, letting her silence speak. "I'm here. I'm staying. There's more to share, but not tonight." James kissed the side of her head, content. Outside, night deepened. In the orchard, leaves rustled softly. The earth held its own secrets. And inside, under the warm kitchen light, a woman stood with a man's arms around her and a new life beginning beneath their joined hands. Some secrets aren't born from fear, but from a quiet hope, the kind that needs the right moment to be spoken. The kind that changes everything, not in a rush, but softly, the way hope first begins to grow. Thank you for listening, and may your own quiet hopes find their perfect moment to be shared.